The Patrick Brontë Experience in Essex. The village of Wethersfield. Patrick Brontë is best known for being the father of the three famous 19th century novelists Charlotte, Emily and Anne Brontë. But how many people know that his first job after leaving Cambridge University in 1806 was as curate at the Church of St Mary Magdalene at Wethersfield in Essex, where he stayed for about 2.5 years. The Wethersfield that Patrick knew when he came to the village in 1806 was not so very different in many ways to the Wethersfield of today, although over time the spelling of the name has changed from Wethersfield with an A to Wethersfield minus the A. But Patrick would still be able to recognise many of the houses along the main roads, as most of them were there by the time he said a final goodbye to the village in 1809. Naturally, there have been alterations and new houses have been built, but he would probably still be able to find his way around most of the village roads should he return. Another problem with a name. This is Patrick as a young man, probably painted by a friend when Patrick was at Cambridge University. The slide also shows the remains of Patrick Bronte's birthplace in Northern Ireland. Patrick was the eldest child, born on St Patrick's Day, no surprises there, 17th of March in the year 1777. His place of birth was a relatively humble house in Emdale in the parish of Drumballyroney, County Down, Northern Ireland. His parents, Hugh and Eleanor, or Alice, brought up a family of 10 children, his father renting land to farm himself. Hugh seems to have been a moderately successful farmer, as the family moved to at least 2 other houses, both larger than the house where Patrick was originally born. It was only when Patrick, as a mature student of about 25, entered St John's College, Cambridge, that he settled the question of the spelling of his last name. Biographers and Brontë scholars have recorded various spellings of his last name, including Branty, Prunty or Brontë. Patrick settled the matter once and for all when he enrolled at St John's and his name was recorded as Brontë. The ability was truly amazing that took a poor Irishman to Cambridge University. Patrick loved books from his earliest years, although his father was unable to pay for his education beyond the age of 16. Patrick then decided to start his own fee-paying school to pass on what knowledge he'd been able to acquire, although he may have had other employments as well as teaching. We know that he was befriended by a local clergyman, Thomas Tye, who admired the diligence of the young man in his reading and further study, taking him under his wing and giving him the rudiments of the classical education of a gentleman that he would require if he were to fulfil his ambition of studying at Cambridge. Thomas Tye inspired Patrick Bronte's future career prospects. The young man was destined to be a Church of England clergyman, for which he would need a theology degree. Graduation and first job. With only the money he'd been able to save by working, and perhaps a subsidy from the Reverend Tye as well, and references testifying to his academic ability, Patrick travelled to England to enrol as an undergraduate at St John's College, Cambridge, where he spent the following 4 very frugal years working for his degree. It is a testament not only to the teaching of Thomas Tye, but to the sheer hard work and ability of Patrick that he was in a position to equal the efforts of other undergraduates who had attended public schools and been privately tutored. Patrick's degree was forthcoming in 1806, and when ordained, he accepted the post at St Mary Magdalene, his vicar being an absentee clergyman, the Reverend Joseph Jowett. Jowett held a full-time post as Professor of Civil Law at Cambridge and only came to do duty at the church for about 3 months each year, so responsibility for the parishioners would fall solely on Patrick's shoulders. This is St George's House at Wethersfield. We know that the population of Wethersfield at this time was about 1,300 souls, and 70% of the population worked in agriculture. The year 1806 was a troubled time, with Napoleon Bonaparte marching across Europe and the threat of invasion very real. England was on high alert, and not for nothing did children sing, "Moonlight, starlight, Boney won't come out tonight," although many went to bed worried that they might one day wake up to find the French army camped on their doorstep. At least Patrick was comfortably housed. He lodged with Miss Mildred Davy, who lived at St John's House just opposite the church. Miss Davy's house had the added attraction of a regular visitor, her very pretty young niece Mary Burder, who came from a well-to-do farming family. And it wouldn't be long before the young curate and Miss Burder, who was only 18 when they met, 12 years younger than Patrick, would come to a kind of understanding. The young couple were great walkers, and Patrick earned the gratitude of the locals by being happy to take villagers' dogs for walks as well. Perhaps this was an ideal excuse to see his loved one, and today we can picture him walking down the main road with a dog or two in tow. One suspects that the young couple made a detour into the more private country lanes as soon as they could. Patrick was a very active, caring, practical clergyman, and his duties kept him busy. Apart from taking duty at christenings, marriages and burials, he had his normal church duties on other days of the week, including Sundays, of course, and visiting the sick was an essential responsibility. Patrick's time at Wethersfield coincided with at least one outbreak of typhus fever. Patrick seems to have been well regarded by the parishioners of Wethersfield and presumably satisfied the expectations of his absentee vicar, Joseph Jowett. However, he had less luck with the guardians of his lady love, Mary Burder. With things becoming serious, it was time for Mary's uncle, her legal guardian following the death of her father, to begin to ask awkward questions about the young Irishman's prospects. He didn't much care for what he heard, and whisked his niece off to nearby Great Yeldham to his farm, forbidding the young couple from maintaining contact in person or by letter. We don't know for certain what the full story was, but it seems that Mary felt Patrick had given up too easily and should have waited until she came of age, while Patrick may have had second thoughts about causing ripples locally that might impact on his future prospects as an ambitious young clergyman. And wasn't it about time that he began to look for another, more responsible post elsewhere? Another factor may have been that Mary's family were nonconformists. How would a possible marriage with a nonconformist be viewed by the Church of England hierarchy? And the rest is history. Whatever the truth behind the stories, Patrick left Wethersfield in 1809 for a curacy in Shropshire. He would move on to other curacies in Yorkshire, eventually ending his life aged 84 years of age, vicar of Haworth Parsonage, Haworth, Yorkshire, having been at the same church for 41 years. In 1813 he had married Miss Maria Bramwell of Penzance, Cornwall, and although she sadly died leaving him with 6 young children, 2 of whom would die before their 13th birthdays, his remaining 4 children, 3 daughters, 1 son, were remarkable and possessed of exceptional literary talent. Recklessly, after his wife's death, Patrick later attempted to rekindle a correspondence with Mary Burger, seeing her, perhaps, as second wife material. Miss Burger's reply left him in no doubt that the past was not forgiven. Vitriol leaps off the page. Her best revenge was that she married a nonconformist minister, had 4 daughters and a happy marriage. However, the works of the Brontë sisters are loved the world over, and although all of his children predeceased him, Patrick lived to share some of his daughter's fame and to be a loved and respected minister to his parishioners in Yorkshire. Not bad for a humble lad from Emdale.